Alright, so visually for the review, one of my most favorite movies of all time. Um, Grew up watching this movie. This movie is possibly the most beautiful, one of the most beautifulest, heart-wrenching at the end. One of those movies that made me cry. I just got done watching it again because it's the 20th anniversary. And it's one of those movies that takes you through time, takes you through such a wonderful ride from the beginning to the end. That is Forrest Gump, directed by Robert Zemeckis, starring Tom Hanks, Sally Field. God, I forgot his name, but the guy who plays Lieutenant Dan. This movie is by far one of the greatest films that Tom Hanks has done. This movie is such a wonderful story about Forrest Gump, who was this little kid. Mom believed in him, and he was in love with this girl named Jenny. Who was his childhood friend. Dude can run real fast, and we see his journey through college, and we see him graduate. We see him going through the army, and everybody considered him as a dummy, but it's like the things he did, which ended up touching people's lives. As he made his friend Bubba, who has the shrimp business, and fighting with him through the army, and it's just like Vietnam, and just seeing, you go through this journey with Forrest through the history of America. Pretty much, this movie tells the history of America almost during the 1950s, 60s, 70s, early 80s. And we see Forrest, who eventually goes through leaps and bounds, and he seems to just eventually do things that you would think somebody like him would possibly do. Like surviving Vietnam and saving his comrades, being a true good person, And I say it like this, but Forrest Gump is an inspiration. He's an inspiration to do better. He's an inspiration to always believe in love, always believe in your friends, always holding on to make sure you go through with that promise that you made with a friend or an individual. Sally Field's wonderful as Forrest's mom. I love every single character in this movie. There's not one person I don't dislike, even though a lot of people might dislike Jenny. But I love Jenny's character. It's what happened at that time. We see her go through the hippie age and her getting addicted to drugs and stuff. And Forrest, ends up buying the shrimp business, becomes a millionaire with Lieutenant Dan. And you see this bond between him and Lieutenant Dan. It starts to build, and even though Lieutenant Dan had no legs and stuff, but Forrest still there for him, still tell him you're still Lieutenant Dan no matter what. So then that's when all of a sudden, him and Jenny, get together again. He lost his mom and stuff, and after Jenny leaves him, Forrest does probably one of the greatest parts in this whole movie. He just runs across the country for 3 years, becomes some type of an inspiration to people. And that's when, all of a sudden he's like just running. He got like 12 to 20 some people follow him across the nation. Then after the 3 years, he just freaking decides like, yo, I don't feel like running no more. So, all of a sudden he goes back, and that's when, he ends up getting a letter. And, he tells the story to different people sitting on that bench waiting for the bus. And the lady finally tells him her apartment is like 5 blocks from. So he goes running there and he meets Jenny again. And that's when, he figures out he has a son. And I kid you not, these last few parts of this movie, him, Jenny getting married, seeing Lieutenant Dan married a Vietnamese woman, and walking with metal legs, able to walk again. Such a wonderful story, man. I'll try to tell you, Doc. And then that's when, all of a sudden, Jenny's sick with a virus. What virus that she has? Probably, I don't know, maybe it was HIV, maybe it was some type of virus. But she died. And Forrest, being a man, being better than some of these other dads, that goes for black and white. Eventually ends up taking care of his son, talking to Jenny's tombstone, and he tells her all the things he does with his son. And then the movie just ends where he's just let his son on the bus, and you see that little feather that was floating around that he put in the book. But then after, he looks at the son's book, which was Curious George, and the feather just floats back in the air. And I mean, before his son gets on the bus, Forrest tells his son, "I love you." And it's something about that part that hits me right here. I know they say, well, you should cry your butt. Well, I think a real man cries. And this is one of the few movies that makes me cry. And really touches me. Like, only moments that really matters. I get a little teary-eyed, a little emotional. I didn't have no father growing up, whatever. But, just to see that. And to see Forrest, everything he went through, and just going through this wonderful journey, ping-ponging, champion, being rich and all that. He lived an average American life, and we don't know what Forrest Gump is doing right now. He could be, seeing his son in college. He probably met another woman, probably got married again. I mean, I would love to see a sequel to Forrest Gump, but they said they weren't going to do it, But yeah, I give this movie 10 out of 10. This movie is a 10 out of 10. It's such a wonderful film. It makes you laugh and cry and sad. And it throws all this stuff at you. So yeah, happy 20th anniversary. I can't believe it's been 20 years since this movie came out. Wow, 1994. I believe I was like 8 years old when this movie came out. And every time I watch it, it just it brings back those feels. So yeah, this is the 20th anniversary Forrest Gump review. Celebrating, just watching this film. I know my friend, she gonna be like, "Why you crying? You such a little pig." I don't care. Anyway, alright guys, peace.